Britain finally cut all ties with the European Union at the end of last year after agreeing on an 11th-hour post-Brexit trade deal. Boris Johnson has continued to slap down gloomy forecasts from Remainers, insisting the country is already proving its worth outside of the Brussels trading bloc. Brexit Britain has struck numerous lucrative trading agreements with countries around the world since fully departing the EU. The most recent of these has been with Australia, with the UK's International Trade Secretary Liz Truss once again leading Brexit Britain through hugely successful trade talks with a close ally. Remainers who have been desperately campaigning for the UK to one day rejoin the EU are furious over the tariff-free, quota-free elements of the FTA with the Southern Hemisphere powerhouse, a former MP has suggested. Former MP Douglas Carswell, who co-founded the Vote Leave campaign and is a non-executive director of the UK's Department of International Trade, has brilliantly exposed the desperate plot from Rejoiners. Writing for the Daily Telegraph, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, said, "Perhaps some of those that spent the week belittling the deal have a rather condescending view of our Australian cousins. The days when anyone in Britain could look down under are long gone. In the 4 decades we were stuck inside the EU, Australia leapfrogged us, with per capita income now almost 15% above ours. Others spent the week suggesting that this deal will ruin UK farming, with a flood of cheap Aussie food imports. This is despite the fact that the deal specifically imposes quotas on Australian beef, sugar and lamb imports for the next 15 years. Nor can I recall such people complaining about agricultural imports from France. It sounds as if a lot of the opposition to this trade deal is confected. Indeed, I can't help but notice that many of those most outspokenly against the deal are Remainers fishing around for a reason to be against it. Why? Having spent much of the referendum campaign telling us such trade deals could not be done, they don't like to be proved wrong. More than that, ever since Britain voted to leave the EU, a certain type of Remainer has harbored the idea that Brexit might be reversed. This new trade deal makes that possibility ever more remote, since it represents the start of a geostrategic shift which no parliamentary arithmetic will be able to easily undo. Mr. Carswell also explained the immediate benefits and paths Brexit and freedom away from EU laws has provided Britain, adding the country is now free to put in place arrangements that suit us, not Brussels, or as was often the case, the interests of corporate Germany. He added, looking back at 4 decades inside Brussels' regulatory orbit, it has become increasingly evident on several products, rules were imposed on us not because it was in the best interests of us or the environment, but in order to advantage German business. Mr. Carswell said, when Remainers complain that the new trade agreement with Australia might complicate our relations with the EU, or impact the Northern Ireland Protocol, what they are really objecting to is the irreversibility of Vote Leave's victory 5 summers ago this week. He also took a brutal swipe at the Labour Party's shadow spokesperson for international trade Emily Thornberry for continuing to speak out about overseas trade. The Vote Leave co-founder concluded, "So overwhelming has been the Remain side's intellectual and moral collapse, those who spent years calling us Little Englanders are today against a deal that would open us up to more global trade." Just when you imagined that Labour's Emily Thornberry could not make herself any more ridiculous, the shadow spokesman for international trade comes out against international trade. Britain's membership of the EU turns out to have been an aberration, a mistake made by our inept elites, and corrected by a popular vote. As we begin to realign, we have 4 decades of relationships to build with the wider world. Our trade agreement with Australia marks the first step.